Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the December 18th, 2019 board meeting to order and remind everyone to please use your microphones when speaking and turn them off when finished. Thank you. Commissioners present are Commissioner Schmidt, Commissioner Duggan, Commissioner Doan, myself, Commissioner Bagnall, and Commissioner Sanders has an excused absence this evening. So we will start with reports by the Chief Executive Officer and management staff.
Thank you. The first thing I wanted to report on is the Portland cryptosporidium results. The City of Portland reported that a total of 6 cryptosporidiumosis were detected in select water samples collected from the Bull Run headworks between November 17th and December 9th. The Oregon Health Authority has determined that the public does not need to take additional protections at this time. However, immune-compromised customers are encouraged to contact their health provider. Complete results of Portland's cryptosporidium monitoring are posted on the Water Bureau's website. The other thing I wanted to update the board on, and we've talked about this a little bit, but is our strategic plan. There was an all-staff meeting held to roll out the initial process of staff involvement in the development of the strategic plan. The first elements of this effort will be in the first couple of months of the new year, where staff will be engaged in their respective departments to get input on the SWOT analysis and develop measurable mission, vision, and core values. As I explained to the board last month, this work will continue over the course of the new year with a draft plan late fall of 2020 that will be presented to the board for consideration. And just for the board's information, the feedback that I'm getting so far from staff on this is actually it's positive and excitement to have a say-so in where we're headed from what I've heard so far. So nobody's come up to me yet and told me it was a horrible idea. So, the other thing I wanted to mention is my schedule over next week. So I will be out of the office this Friday, my normal day off, through January 1 and back here January 2nd. The office is closed for the holidays, December 25th and January 1st. For water emergencies, the public may reach the district at 503-848-3000. The acting incapacity, or AIC, scheduled for the CEO for me is Tim Bolin, and IT Services Director, for December 23rd and 27th. Andrea Watson, our Communications and Public Affairs Supervisor, on December 24th and the 26th. And Carrie Pack, the Chief Engineer, December 30th and the 31st. So with that, unless there's any questions for me, I'm going to turn this over for a safety minute and department report to Andrew.
Okay. Good evening, President Bagnall, Board of Commissioners. Tonight's safety moment is a seasonal safety moment, and the topic is courtesy of our safety department, and it is the gift of preparedness. Let's see if our clicker works. Does not work. All right, thanks, Paul. All right, so giving preparedness. So the winter holiday season is really an opportunity to help others prepare for an emergency in addition to your usual seasonal festivities, because as we all know, disasters can strike any time of year, including during the holidays. One way to show someone you care, you can consider giving the gift of preparedness. You'll be giving those who you gift safety and peace of mind, and you can do this to family, friends, and those in need. So I broke down some of the preparedness gift ideas into small-sized items, medium-sized items, large, and other. So in the small-sized items category, you could consider giving a flashlight, a backup phone battery, or freeze-dried food. Medium-sized, you could think about an emergency water storage container, first aid kit, emergency radio, multi-tool, or camp stove. Large items, you could consider a pre-made or custom-assembled 72-hour kit, 30-day emergency food supply, or if you're Clark Balfour, a generator. Other ideas you could think about, these are non-physical things, first aid classes or car maintenance lessons, but whatever you give, be prepared and help others be prepared. And the department report?
I have a comment about camp stoves. White gas has 10 times the energy density of propane. So for every 1 gallon of white gas you'd have to have 10 gallons of propane to produce the same heat. So I have a white gas stove, which are really cheap on Craigslist, and 3 gallons of white gas, and I'm good.
Okay. Were we doing the department report now or at the end?
So why don't we go ahead and do the department report since you're already sitting there poised and ready to go.
Okay. So the department report tonight is a brief update on the CIS project. Just a quick overview, since we haven't talked for a little while. Our purpose of the project is to replace the legacy utility billing system with the COTS CIS. As we've discussed, this is a partnership between TVWD and Clean Water Services, our billing partner. There are 3 phases and 3 agreements between the 2 agencies. And some of our key ingredients, we have a strong partnership. We have strong organizational support from both agencies. We have established project oversight in the governance. We have a commitment to configuration, not customizing the new system. We have strong staff engagement, not just the core team, but also SMEs. And we also have external expertise that we procured through competitive RFP. Our CIS project objectives, I'm not going to read all of these, but these stand. We've talked about these for some time, and we're using these criteria as we select a new CIS, ranging from current and projected business needs, all the way to providing a sustainable and predictable support cost model. Quick review of our scope, schedule, budget. Again, for the CIS solution itself, we're looking at CIS batch processing and a new customer web self-service portal. This is a multi-year project. The implementation will start once we select a vendor. Once we start, we're projecting 22 months, and that includes several months of post-go-live stabilization. At this time, we think that our implementation will start in the spring of 2020. Total project budget is $9.5 million, and this consists of external costs as well as internal project labor and contingency. So here's where we are on our selection. We developed our requirements, we published an RFP, we evaluated 10 proposals, we conducted on-site vendor demos for 3 vendors in October, and at this point we have 2 vendors coming on site in January to conduct with us what we're calling confirmation workshops, and this is where we're confirming the scope, and it's an opportunity for both sides to ask questions of each other. And we have Hansen Technologies and Open International are 2 finalists. At the end of that process, after we have the confirmation workshops, they have the opportunity to provide us BAFO, or Best and Final Offer. At that point, we'll probably conduct site visits or a site visit, and sometime thereafter, we'll select the finalist, and then we'll be negotiating a contract before we can start the implementation. So in terms of our phasing of our agreements, again, we've got 3 phases and 3 agreements. The first phase is the initiation through the contract with the CIS vendor. That's where we are right now. You and Clean Water Services Board approved that IGA in 2018. Right now, we're working on the IGA for implementation, and we're expecting that'll come to you and Clean Water Services Board in February of 2020. What we're going to provide is going to be a framework for sharing external and labor costs, and we'll give you a presentation, we believe, at the February work session. And then finally, the third phase is ongoing operations under the new CIS, and that's something we need to develop before we go live. And the last slide is on monthly billing, and our CEOs had discussions with some of you about the possibility of converting to monthly billing before we go live with a new CIS. possibly under the legacy system. We're working on assessing that possibility right now, and we're looking at the operational feasibility and the implementation feasibility. But just to be clear, if we do this, this would mean for residential customers, monthly billing, but we would still be doing bi-monthly reads. So we're also looking at customer impacts, what communications needs we would have, really the trade-offs of a transition to monthly billing on the legacy versus a new system, and then we're of course involving clean water services in these discussions. So that's my update for tonight. I'm happy to entertain any questions you might have.
All right, I don't see any entertaining questions, so thank you very much, Andrew. Next, we will move to Commissioner communications and reports of meetings attended. Commissioner Doan, would you like to lead us off?
Sure. Last Thursday, I attended the Aloha Business Association meeting, and it was quite enlightening. Talked about how to get students engaged at the high school to have mentorship opportunities with local businesses. And then tonight's meeting.
Moving to Commissioner Duggan.
On the 3rd of December, I had a lunch meeting with you, President Bagnall, Tom Hickman, Clark, and Paul to discuss partner issues with the Willamette Water Supply System, and the meeting that I attended to prepare for the meeting I attended on December 5th, which was the regular monthly meeting of the WWSS. On the 11th, I attended the Regional Water Providers Consortium Executive Committee, where the committee was briefed on the preparations for next year's budget for the consortium. Staff is proposing roughly a 5% increase with a couple new initiatives consisting of hiring a Spanish language intern and some other issues with emergency management. Even though it's a 5% increase with the new initiatives, it'll roughly translate into about a 2% dues increase for all the members because there's another carryover that will reduce the anticipated annual dues. Staff is also applying for an urban area security grant from the United States federal government for more emergency planning activities and to purchase another water distribution system so that we can have a robust backup system for any emergencies that are anticipated, and making sure that we have enough of them in the region so that if there is a large subduction zone earthquake where moving things around will be more difficult, that there will be enough equipment in the various parts of the region where everyone can be properly served. We did get an update that the city of Wilsonville is currently considering rejoining the consortium, and that's a fairly recent development, and it's good news to have them rejoin, especially as it relates to the emergency planning and the conservation programs. In March, there will be a Fix a Leak Week program where there will be various activities reminding folks that they can check their toilets and other ways to make sure that water isn't being wasted through inadvertent leaks. And then there's tonight's meeting. That's it for the month of December.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Schmidt.
Thank you. Since there was no work session this month, tonight's meeting. Well, that's right, the breakfast meeting with Tom to discuss the agenda.
Okay, I had a few. On the 3rd of December, I met with Commissioner Duggan, our CEO, our CFO, and our legal counsel to talk about communications and relationships with the Willamette Water Supply partners. On the 5th, I met with the JWC Executive Committee, and we were in session to consider signing a memorandum of understanding with the Bureau of Reclamation. And it's interesting that this process that started in 2001 is just finally reaching the point where they're going to do some actual alternatives analysis, and they want access to JWC staff to provide them information on water supply, water rights, water storage, and water quality in the Tualatin River Basin, and the JWC has a lot of that data. A concern I raised at the meeting is that, especially since this process has dawdled along for 20 years, I don't want any work the JWC staff provides to the Bureau of Reclamation to in any way slow down our I want to say schedule on the Willamette Water Supply Project. And I was given assurances by the general manager of the JWC that that would not happen. They had a specific staff person assigned to deal with the Bureau of Reclamation who has no Willamette responsibilities. So that was approved in executive session. And then on the 10th, Commissioner Schmidt and I met with the CEO to do agenda planning for this meeting. On the 17th, I met with our CEO, our legal counsel, and our communications person, Norm Eder, to discuss our partnership with Beaverton and some issues that we've been going through with that. And then tonight's meeting for regular business. The next item on the agenda is topics to be raised by the commissioners. And oftentimes we don't have any of those outside of the agenda items, but tonight we do. It has recently come to our attention that our CEO has not received the full amount of moving expenses that we had intended to authorize within his contract. So we want to take some action to amend that. And Clark is going to help me with that, right?
I have a suggested motion. So this arises out of the CEO's transition and relocation agreement, where the board agreed to reimburse Tom, our then to be new CEO, for relocation expenses as he came over from where he was residing in Bend. So if I understand the board's desire, we would need to make an amendment to that agreement, and we would bring that back to you for actual execution at some later date, but you can take the action by motion tonight if you desire. And I think the motion would be this, that sections 1 and 3 of the CEO transition and relocation agreement be amended to provide that the CEO shall be reimbursed for actual incurred moving and relocation costs, plus any additional amounts for tax liabilities resulting from or attributed to that reimbursement payment.
Can I get a motion to approve?
So move.
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to amend the CEO agreement to provide full moving expenses reimbursement. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And no opposed. The motion passes. Moving to public comment. Public comment time is set aside for persons wishing to address the board on items on the consent agenda and matters not on the agenda. Additional public comment will be invited on agenda items as they are presented. Do we have any persons who would like to comment at this time? Seeing none, I will move to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are considered to be routine and may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Any board member may request that an item be removed by motion for discussion and separate action. And any items that are requested to be removed for separate discussion will be considered immediately after the board approves those items which do not require separate discussion. Tonight we have 3 items on the consent agenda. Item A is to approve the November 20th, 2019 regular meeting minutes. Item B, adopt the standards, criteria, and policy directives for the Chief Executive Officer's performance evaluation. And item C, adopt Resolution 2919, a resolution establishing regular monthly meeting dates of the Board of Commissioners for the calendar year 2020. Do I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
I so move.
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And with no opposed, the motion passes. Moving to the business agenda. We will consider accepting the report of the independent auditor and the district's comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal years ended June 30th, 2019 and 2018. And we have a staff report from CFO Paul Matthews.
Good evening, President Bagnall, Commissioners. Tonight we're asking the Board to accept the District's 2019 Comprehensive Annual Financial Reporters. We affectionately call it our CAFR. The CAFR contains the District's financial statements for the year ended June 30, 2019 and June 30, 2018. A draft of the CAFR was provided in your board packet. Preparing the CAFR is truly a team effort, requiring significant effort from our accounting team. Joining us here tonight is the district's controller, David Schick, who's I think seated right behind me. David leads the team that prepares the CAFR. As you can imagine, it is a large work effort. We've had a lot of new staff members join us this year, and so he's had his hands full. So I want to take this as an opportunity just to publicly thank David for his hard work in pulling this together as he did. Tonight, I will not spend time going over the financial reports of the districts. We've talked about the financial health of the district both in August and September, so we won't update that again. But I do want to give you a brief update on what we've done with our PERS pension obligations. You might recall that in the budget process, you appropriated money to fund a side account with PERS. And what that allows us to do is to invest the district's funds in investments that are more appropriate for its retirement obligations. We have the PERS board do that for us. In September, the district deposited $10 million in a new side account, and that made us eligible for an $860,000 match from the state's employer incentive fund, which further then reduced our pension obligations and was in the long term going to reduce our PERS cost, saving our citizens money. So we're happy about that. Now back to the CAFR.
And good work on meeting a tight timeline for that application.
Yes,
I'm very impressed to read that.
It was interesting. The way they did it was on a first-come, first-served basis. They opened it up for an online submittal at 10 a.m. on Monday, December the 2nd. And our controller, David Schick, was there at the ready with the mouse and keyboard. He had practiced and had all the stuff on one screen and entered in there and got it in 1 minute and 59 seconds. Is that right?
And even with that effort, I came in 7th.
And he came in 7th. But it was fully subscribed, and in fact, the money was gone that day. So good thing we were right there with it. But I want to come back to the CAFR. Preparing the CAFR is just one part of the district's financial reporting process. In addition to that, in addition to publishing our financial report statements in the CAFR, the district also undergoes an independent auditor. And so tonight we have our independent auditor here to give you a report on the findings of their audit. The district's independent auditor is Moss Adams, and Keith Simovic is with Moss Adams. He's here to answer questions that you might have and make a presentation. But before I turn it over to Keith, I'm available to answer any questions, or I might say entertain any questions that you might have. Questions? Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Mr. Simovic. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Paul, and good evening, commissioners, and happy holidays as well. It's coming right around the corner, which seems like that snuck up really quick on me, so it means I need to desperately go out and get some gifts for my wife, definitely. Not on top of that yet. But I'm excited to be here and representing Moss Adams and be before you to present the results of the audit this year. Being before you, with presenting the final results is always a lot of fun because it means, we're done with the audit. And so back on December 12th is when we finalized our audit opinions and submitted those over to the district. But two, that we can give you, or really have an opportunity to get before you to give you a little more insight into the audit process. Because when you look at that CAFR document, 100+ pages that are put together by management, we're really only responsible for maybe 6 pages in there, right? And so it doesn't seem like a whole lot, but there's a tremendous amount of effort that goes into that. And even though I'm the only one here representing our firm tonight, there's a whole team behind me that's putting effort into that. So we want to give you a little more insight into that process and the procedures that we go through to get to that point. We also want to talk a little bit about some additional communications that we are required by our professional standards to let you know about how the audit went, if there were findings that we ran into along the way that we need to let you know about. So we're going to kind of bring you into that process a little bit more as well. And I do apologize. I know my voice isn't great. Definitely came down with something from the kiddos. That's what happens when you have little ones in preschool. So not sounding 100%, but I'm doing all right. So first off, I want to let you know about the 2 audit reports that we are responsible for in the CAFR document. The first one that you'll see on page 13 of the CAFR is our audit report over the financial statements. And what you've really hired us to do with that report is to give an audit opinion as to whether we believe those financial statements, which are prepared by management of the district, whether those financial statements and the numbers and the disclosures included within that document are a fair representation and materially correct in terms of being reported fairly and accurately in accordance with governmental accounting standards. Additionally, we're looking to make sure that all the disclosures include all the different bells and whistles that are required by the governmental accounting standards. There's a whole slew of new standards that management needs to be on top of every single year, and you've got a team here, one that's definitely got the experience and the skill set to be able to put together that document and be on top of any new accounting standards as they come out to be able to put together a fair and accurate document. The second report that we have been hired to give to you is our report on page 105, and that's our report on compliance with certain state requirements. Because you're an Oregon municipal corporation, the state of Oregon requires that we do a number of additional procedures to test for compliance with certain state laws and regulations. And the ones where we spend the bulk of our time, one, looking at your budgeting process, making sure that you followed all the state guidelines for getting that budget adopted and approved, and documenting that process along the way. And the other piece that we spend a lot of time on is the public procurement process. So the public contracting and making sure you're following all the state guidelines depending on the dollar value of those contracts, and making sure that you're following those state laws and regulations. So we do some sampling there to test those as well. So those are the 2 audit reports that you'll find within the CAFR that we're responsible for. And in a few minutes, we'll talk about what we've actually said within those documents. To give you a little more insight into the audit process, we really break up our fieldwork into 2 phases. The first of those 2 phases is really our interim fieldwork. That's where we're really spending time looking at internal controls. So we're doing that one first of our 2 phases of fieldwork. And it's an important process of what we do because it feeds into our risk assessment process. So every year we want to look at the audit from a fresh perspective and have a really good idea of what the risks are and where do we need to spend the bulk of our time when we're looking at all the final balances and transactions when we come back out for final field work. And so if we're finding during our review and evaluation of internal controls that there's a general lack of internal controls or significant deficiencies in internal controls, that really does impact our risk assessment and causes us to do additional work to make sure we can feel comfortable that the values presented in the CAFR are fair and accurate. And so it's a big piece of what we do. Then our second phase of fieldwork, our final fieldwork, that's when we're really looking at those final balances and doing our testing to make sure that those are fair and accurate. So that can involve things such as some of our substantive procedures to send out or look at invoices and do some sampling to look at the underlying evidence supporting what's recorded in the financial statements, looking at underlying contracts and agreements and making sure what has been recorded in your financial records is consistent with those, that it's been recorded at the correct amount in the correct period, and to the correct account as well is another big piece of that. We also send out confirmations to all your third-party financial institutions, making sure what you have recorded on your books is consistent with what those financial institutions have confirmed as to what they hold on your behalf. And we're also checking in with legal, too, to make sure if there's anything significant out there that the accounting standards would require you to accrue for or disclose in your financial statements. So those are a number of different procedures we're doing. We also do some analytical procedures, and those are really helpful sometimes to just step back, not thinking about the detailed testing and the sampling that we're doing where you're really kind of looking for a needle in a haystack. The stepping back and really doing analytical procedures to say, hey, did the district end up where we thought they would? Based on everything we know about reading through the minutes during the year, talking to management, getting an idea of what were the significant transactions during the year, and how would we expect those to be reflected in the financial statements? When we kind of incorporate those things in and take a step back, it really gives us a good perspective on, do these financial statements make sense in light of all that information? So that's another big piece of what we're doing as well. So our audit results, if you look at our 2 audit reports, first our audit opinion on the financial statements, you'll see that we've given a unmodified opinion on those financial statements. So that's consistent with a clean opinion, exactly what you're looking for, and again means that we believe those financial statements are free of material misstatement, whether due to error or fraud. So a great result, and again with a lot of the turnover, specifically in the accounting and finance department, definitely a challenge for the district to step up to the plate, but it was an all hands on deck approach from the district. And so getting to this point and being able to present to you and have a final audit opinion, I think is a great win for the district, and another clean audit opinion, which I think is great as well. And then in our Oregon Minimum Standards report on compliance with certain state laws and regulations, we didn't have any compliance findings. So through the procedures we did over the budgeting process and the procurement process and some of the sampling that we did there to make sure that you've kind of checked all those boxes and maintained that documentation to prove that you've checked those boxes with the procurement process, we didn't have any compliance findings that came out of that process for the current year. So more good news there. Additional items that we want to bring to your attention. One, we didn't have any limitations on the scope of our audit. That would go back to if there was anything where, we were asking for a piece of documentation or we were asking a certain question and we weren't given a response to that, we weren't given that piece of documentation. That could impact our ability to give a clean audit opinion, but I think it's always important for the board to know that, there was nothing that management put in place to really impede our process to be able to get to this point. And so, that allows us to get to this point where we can give a clean opinion on the financial statements. So
So there's
important news
no
there.
obstruction of audit?
No obstruction of audit, no. Also, we want to let you know if there were any significant or material adjustments to the financial statements. We didn't have any material audit adjustments. We did have one reclassification adjustment related to closing one project that was in work in process that needed to be closed to assets and service. But that was really a reclassification, didn't change your overall total assets or net position or your change in net position for the current year. So that was the only item that was identified in the current year. Then also, we also didn't have any material weaknesses in internal controls. That's really kind of the auditor speak for the highest level of lack of checks and balances in place, right? If there was such a hole in controls where we think there could be a significant error that could occur and not be detected by management with the current control structure, that's something that we would call a material weakness that we'd want to let you know about so that you could make changes for going forward and how to address that. And so that's something we'd want to let you know about, but none of those items came up in the current year. We do have a number of best practices each year that we kind of discuss with management during the audit process, and we work with them each year to check in on those and if those are being addressed as well, but nothing that really rises to that level of a material weakness, which I think is very good news as well. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have on the process as well.
See any questions? Thank you very much for your report, for your work, and I want to congratulate staff. I mean, my goodness, with all the staff turnover and retirements this year, with the WIFIA loan application, with everything that finance has been working on, I think it's amazing that they got it done in time and we got a clean opinion. It's wonderful news, and congratulations and thanks to staff.
We would like you to accept by motion this agenda item.
I'm getting there. Okay. So, The item before us is consider accepting the report of the independent auditor and the district's comprehensive annual, oh, I read the wrong thing, sorry. Do I have a motion and a second to accept the report of the independent auditor and the district's comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal years ended June 30th, 2019 and 2018?
I'll move to accept the annual report of the independent auditor as described.
Second?
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
With no opposed, the motion passes.
Thank you.
And since we have already had Andrew's informational presentation, unless there's something you want to add to it, there is no further business, so the meeting is adjourned. And happy holidays, everybody.